Hi guys, and welcome back to the Crochet Toy YouTube channel. In today's video I'm bringing you another new crochet tutorial, and this time it's another Pokemon one. So the Pokemon that I've made this time is Dustox. So this is what I'll be showing you how to make. This is the normal version of Dustox. I have also made a shiny version too. So this is the shiny version. This was like my prototype. I did make a couple of amendments for the final Dustox, so they're not completely the same. But the only difference other than that for the shiny version is that you'd want to use a light brown and a dark brown colour for the wings instead of using green. Other than that, like I say, it's completely the same, but in the video I'll be showing you the colour scheme for the normal one. This was a request by someone whose username is Nunya Beeswax, which that's quite funny. But yeah, I saw your comment come through like a couple of weeks ago, and I just immediately when I saw it I was thinking about the ways that I would be able to design this, and I knew that I just had to get on and do it. Sometimes I see a request and I'm like, I just have to do that one. So I hope you like this, and yeah, without further ado, let's get into what you'll be needing for this tutorial. For this tutorial you'll be needing aran weight yarn in the following colours: dark green, mid green, red, yellow and purple. You definitely don't need anywhere near as much of the yarn as what I'm showing here. Probably about half of these quantities or even less would be sufficient for this. You also need an amount of black aran yarn as well, quite a small amount because this is only for some dots that we're going to be making with this, and then also embroidering the mouth detail with this as well. Then you'll be needing your crochet hook. I've got a 4mm crochet hook to go over my aran weight yarn. If you're using a different weight of yarn, just make sure that you size up or down your hook as required. Then you'll be needing some scissors, you'll be needing a yarn needle for sewing everything together, a stitch marker to keep track of your rounds, some stuffing. You'll need a lot more than this, but this is just to demonstrate. And then finally, it's probably quite useful in this tutorial to have some pins to help pin things in place when you're sewing them down. Just makes it a bit easier to keep things in the right position. We're going to start off by crocheting the body. So for this you're going to need your purple yarn, and we're going to start off by working 6 single crochets into a magic circle. And then pull on the remaining tail to close up the hole. So that's round 1, we should have our 6 single crochets. Then for round 2 we're going to increase all the way around. So to do that we're just going to work 2 single crochets in every single stitch, which should get us up to 12 single crochets at the end of round 2. And if you've still got a hole remaining, as you can see I do in the middle, just pull on that yarn tail again to close it up. Okay, so that's the end of round 2. You should have 12 single crochets all the way around. I'm going to talk you through the next rounds until we need to start decreasing, as the next few rounds will just be mixtures of single crochets and increases in each round. So hopefully if you've managed to complete round 1 and 2 you should be able to complete these. So for round 3 you're just going to single crochet all the way around, so that should be 12 single crochets. Round 4 you're going to do single crochet increase and repeat that pattern 5 more times to get you up to 18 single crochets. Round 5 single crochet all the way around. Round 6 2 single crochet increase, repeat 5 more times to get you up to 24 single crochets. Round 7 single crochet all the way around. Round 8 3 single crochet increase, repeat 5 more times to get you up to 30 single crochets. Round 9 4 single crochet increase, repeat 5 more times to get you up to 36 single crochets. Round 10 5 single crochet increase, repeat 5 more times to get you up to 42 single crochets. Then rounds 11 to 18 single crochet all the way around, so 42 single crochets per round. I'll meet you at the beginning of round 19, as that's when we're then going to start doing some decreases. finished round 18 and this is what it's looking like. Now we're going to do round 19 and we're going to do some decreases in this round. So to start off with, you're going to do 5 single crochets. And then you're going to do a decrease. So to do a decrease, just start off like you're doing a normal single crochet, but then instead of yarning over and pulling through both loops on your hook, go into the next stitch, pull up another loop, then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook like that. And you're just going to repeat that same pattern all the way around, so that should be 5 more times of doing 5 single crochet decrease, and that will get you down to 36 single crochets at the end of this round. So I'm just showing you one more where I'm doing 5 single crochets and then a decrease. So yeah, just repeat that pattern all the way around and I'll meet you when you finished round 19. So now I'm about to start round 20 and we're just simply going to single crochet all the way around in this round, but we're going to do it in the back loops only. So what I mean by this is, obviously this is a normal single crochet in both of these loops here, but for the back loops only, it's just the loop that's furthest away from you that we're going to crochet into. So we're going to do that all the way around and that will be 36 single crochets total. So I'll meet you when you finish round 20. So this is what it looks like after the end of round 20. You should notice that those front loops that we didn't work in are kind of obvious now in this round, and that's the desired effect. So yeah, if your work looks like that, then that means you've done it properly. So I'm just going to tell you the next few rounds now because it's all techniques that I've shown you now. So for rounds 21 to 22, you're just going to single crochet all the way around in both loops as normal. Round 23, single crochet all the way around in the back loops only. Rounds 24 to 25, single crochet all the way around in both loops as normal. Round 26, single crochet all the way around in the back loops only. Round 27, single crochet all the way around in both loops as normal. Round 28, 4 single crochet decrease and repeat that pattern 5 more times in the back loops only to get you down to 30 single crochets. Then round 29, 3 single crochet decrease and repeat that pattern 5 more times to get you down to 24 single crochets, and that's working in both loops as normal. Then round 30, 2 single crochet decrease, repeat that pattern 5 more times to get you down to 18 single crochets, and again that's in both loops as normal. I'll meet you at the end of round 30 as we then need to stuff this, and then there's just a couple more rounds left to do. So I finished round 30 and this is what it looks like, and I've added some stuffing now, so you're going to want to do the same. There's just 2 rounds left to do. So round 31 is single crochet decrease, repeat that 5 more times to get you down to 12 single crochets at the end of the round, and both these rounds are worked in both loops as normal, by the way. And then round 32 is just decrease all the way around until you get down to 6 single crochets. So I'll meet you when you finish round 32. Just finished round 32 and this is what it looks like now. So I'm just going to cut the yarn, leaving a little bit of the tail, and then close up the remaining hole. So I'm just going to weave the yarn tail through the front loop of each of those remaining 6 single crochets. And then just pull on that to close up the hole, and then you can weave your yarn tail through. I tend to like to weave it through to where I think the back is going to be, and I think that's going to be here because this is the less neat part where we you can see where the start of the round is because of the back loop only rounds. So I'm just going to weave it through here. Try and flatten the bottom as much as possible, and then just cut that yarn tail as we won't need that anymore. So now what we need to do is we're going to need to go back and reattach our yarn into these available front loops at the bottom of the piece here, and we're going to work a kind of skirt around the bottom. So let's move on to doing that now. So for the skirt, we're reattaching our yarn into any one of the available front loops that we didn't work from round 27, and I would recommend that you attach your yarn into one of the first stitches of the round, because like I say, this is going to be the messier side of your work, so I'd recommend that you leave all of this stuff hidden at the back, and then you keep the front as clean as possible like this. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just finding again where the round started, and I'm just going to go inside that front loop. And reattach my yarn, and then I'm going to do a chain to secure that in place. And then all we're going to do for the first round is we're just going to single crochet all the way around in those available front loops that we didn't work in previously. So you may just need to take your time a little bit with this. It can be a little bit fiddly, but just like this, going into those front loops and single crochet. So I'll finish that all the way around, because otherwise it's going to be very long if you watch me do that, and then I'll talk about the next rounds. So after completing round 1 of the skirt, this is what it's looking like. Obviously there's a bit of a gap here, but that's going to get covered up when you start round 2, which will just literally be single crocheting all the way around again. So just like this, 36 single crochets all around. Now at this point you can cut your yarn tail as well if you've crocheted over that, so I'm just going to cut that to get that out of the way. And I will just explain to you what round 3 is as well, because it's quite straightforward. So for round 3, you're just going to do 8 single crochet increase and repeat that 3 more times to get you up to 40 single crochets. Now I'll meet you when you finish round 3. We then just need to do round 4, which is the final round of the skirt, but there is a bit more to that. There's picot stitches within that, but I'm going to show you how to do that if you haven't done that before, and it's not that difficult. It's just something that maybe doesn't come up too often in Amigurumi. So I will meet you when you're ready to start round 4. So I'm ready to start round 4 now, and we're going to be doing a pattern where we're going to do a pattern in 4 stitches, and then we're going to repeat that all the way around. So that will be 10 times that we're going to do that in total. So I'm going to show you what we need to do now. So to start off with, we're just going to do a single crochet in the next stitch, nice and easy. Then this is where we're doing some slightly different stitches. So in the next stitch, we're going to work a few different stitches. We're going to start off by doing a double crochet. So for that, you just need to yarn over before you put your hook into the stitch and pull up a loop. Then yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the remaining 2 loops. That's the double crochet. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a chain free picot stitch. So to do that, you're going to chain free as the name suggests. So 1, 2, 3, and then what you're going to do is simply slip stitch into the first chain that you did, and this creates a kind of point effect, which you'll see as you continue doing this all the way around. So that's the picot stitch. As I say, it's not that complicated, but it's just not something that's maybe that common in Amigurumi. Then we're going to do another double crochet in the same stitch. So just doing our double crochet. Then we're going to do a single crochet in the next stitch. And then finally we're going to do a slip stitch in the next stitch. And that is our pattern within the 4 stitches. So I'm just going to show you that pattern once more. So single crochet, then in the next stitch, double crochet, chain free picot, and then a double crochet in the same stitch, and then a single crochet in the next stitch, and then a slip stitch in the next stitch. And hopefully you can see that's starting to create these kind of pointy bits, kind of looks like a frill along the edge, and that's the look that we're going for. So I need to do that 8 more times, and that's going to get me back to where I started, and that will be the end of round 4. So I've just finished round 4, that's the final round for the skirt. So you can just cut your yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail. It just makes it a bit easier for you to weave it in. And then I would recommend doing some knots on the inside of the skirt that you're not really going to see. And then I'm just going to get my yarn needle and bring the yarn down to the bottom like this. And then I'm just going to weave that yarn tail through the bottom, just a little bit like that, and then cut that. Okay, so that is now the main body complete, and as I said before, I'd recommend making the front of this the neater side and then hiding all of these bits where you can kind of see the break in the rounds, leaving that at the back. So now we're going to move on to crocheting the ears. We're now going to crochet the ears. You're going to need your yellow yarn for this, and I've actually crocheted one of the ears already to show you an example of what it's going to look like. So this is what it looks like, and it's not showing up particularly well on camera, but there's some parts where you can see that the stitches look a little bit raised, and that's because we're going to be doing some rounds in back loop only. And the reason for that is if you look at a picture of Dustox, it does have kind of some lines around the ears, so I was just trying to create that by using back loop only crochet. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off in round 1 by doing 4 single crochets in a magic circle. So that's round 1. Then for round 2 we're going to increase all the way around, so 2 single crochets in each stitch, which will get us up to 8 single crochets. Okay, so that's round 2 completed. For round 3 we're then going to do 3 single crochets, then an increase in the next stitch, and then you're going to repeat that again, so 3 single crochets, and then an increase. So that will get you up to 10 at the end of round 3. Now we're going to do some rounds in back loop only and some rounds of just standard single crocheting all the way around. So for round 4 you're going to single crochet all the way around in the back loops only, so that should be 10 single crochets. So that's round 4 complete. Then in round 5 you're just going to single crochet all the way around like normal, so going into both loops now rather than just this back loop. You're going to do the same for round 6, so 2 rounds of just single crocheting all the way around in both loops as normal. Round 7 you're going to do single crochet all the way around in the back loops only again, so exactly the same as what we've just done now for round 4. Rounds 8 to 9 single crochet all the way around in both loops as normal, and then round 10 a final round of single crocheting all the way around in the back loops only. So I'll meet you when you're ready to start round 11, as that's when we're going to decrease and close up the piece. I finished round 10 and this is what it's looking like. I've also added some stuffing at this point, so you're going to want to stuff moderately, as round 11 is the final round that we're going to be doing for this. So in this round we're just going to simply decrease all the way around, so that should be 5 decreases in total, and again doing this in both loops as normal now. Okay, so that's round 11 complete. Now what I'm going to do is cut my yarn, leaving a fairly long tail for sewing. And then I'm going to get my yarn needle and close up this remaining hole by weaving the yarn tail through the front loop of each of those final 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm gonna weave my yarn tail through the middle of that hole to sort of the bottom segment still of the ear. This is roughly where we're going to start sewing, so I'm just going to bring my yarn tail out here. You can always change where you start sewing from later, so it doesn't really matter, but if you pull on it a little bit, that will flatten out the bottom of the ear a little bit rather than making it as pointy as it was before. So that is what the ear looks like. So you're going to obviously need to make 2 of the ears like this. And once you have your 2 ears, come back and I'll show you how to sew them to the body. I've already sewn down one of the ears. I'm going to do the other one with you now. I've put this little pin here just to kind of remind myself of where I think the centre of the piece is going to be, just to help me with my positioning a little bit. Obviously you don't need to do that, that's just my preference in terms of helping guide me with my sewing the ears down. I'm just going to hold it in place rather than actually pinning it, just because it's quite a thick piece, and I found that the pins kept kind of coming out. But if you've got long pins, then that might work in this situation. And I'm just going to try my best to position this as well as I can to match up with the other side, and just start whip stitching around. Yeah, you also need to be careful not to accidentally crochet round or sew round the piece, but just checking the positioning of that. Then just making sure that still looks okay. Okay, so that is what the ear looks like when it's sewn down. You can sew the bit at the back down as well if you want to, but I find it secure enough without needing to do that, so I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to weave my yarn tail through the ear. Sorry if you can hear my dog in the background. And then just cut the tail. So that's what it looks like with the 2 ears sewn down. We're going to make the eyes next. So the eyes are made by having two base yellow sort of semicircle shapes like this. This is one of the eyes. I'm going to show you how to make the other one in a second. And then what we're going to do is we're going to crochet some little black dots to put on the eyes, and there's going to be 3 dots per eye, and we're going to sew the dots onto the eyes before we sew the eyes onto the body, because that will just make it easier, as we'll still have access to the back of the eye at that point, so we can make some knots and stuff on the inside and it won't be visible when you sew that down to the body. So let's start off with making the main yellow bases for the eyes. So this is an example of one of them. I'm going to do the other one with you now, and we're going to be working in rows for this. So for row 1, start off by chaining 7, and then we're simply going to single crochet across the chain, so that should be 6 single crochets as we're starting from the second chain from hook. And again, as I always explain, you can crochet into these loops if you want, so these front loops, or you can crochet in the back bump here, and I generally prefer to crochet in the back bump, but it only makes a difference in terms of the appearance of your piece. It won't affect anything if you decide that you want to crochet in the front loops, because it's easier. I just prefer how it looks crocheting into the back loop. So what I'm also going to do when I'm nearly at the end of the chain here, so I've got 3 stitches left, I'm going to start crocheting over the tail too, so that I can then just cut this at the end, because it will be secured as I've crocheted over it. Okay, so that's row 1 complete. I'm going to pull on the tail a little bit to make it a bit neater at the end there. Then I'm going to cut this. And now I'm ready to start row 2. So rows 2 and 3 are going to be completely the same. You're just going to chain 1, turn your work, and then crochet across, so 6 single crochets. So same thing for row 3, chain 1, turn, single crochet across. Oops. Let's do that one again. Okay, so then for row 4, you're going to chain 1, turn. This time you're going to do a decrease, 2 single crochets, and then another decrease to get you down to 4 at the end of that row. Then for row 5, chain 1, turn, 2 decreases. So that's our semicircle shape complete. We're then just going to cut our yarn, leaving a fairly long tail. You actually need it to be a bit longer than you'd think, because you're going to need to crochet all the way around the eye with this, or sorry, sew all the way around the eye with this tail. So these are the 2 base eyes that I have. Now let's move on to making the black dots with our black yarn. So I've made 5 of the dots. Hopefully you can kind of see in this bit of a mess here, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I'm going to make the 6th one with you now, because as I mentioned before, we're going to need to make 3 per eye, so that's 6 in total. So they're really quick to make. You're just going to need your black yarn for this, and you're going to start off by chaining 3. And I would recommend that you leave a fairly long tail at the beginning, enough that you would be able to put your yarn needle in and sew with it, because it will make your life easier when you're trying to sew the dots to the eyes later on. So I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm simply going to slip stitch to the first chain like this, and then I'm going to cut my yarn again, making sure that it's a fairly long tail so it's long enough to sew with. Bring that yarn tail through, and then you can just leave it there if you want, or if you want to, you can actually knot the 2 tails together like this, so I'm going to choose to do this like that, and that's your dot ready to be sewn onto the yellow eye. So like I say, you're going to need 6 of these, so once you've got 6, come back and I'll show you how to sew them to the eye. I've sewn the black dots onto one of the eyes, as you can see here, and this is what I was talking about before in terms of it's good to do it at this stage, because then you can do some knotting at the back to secure those black yarn tails in place. But yeah, this is what it looks like. So you've got kind of 2 dots at the top here, and then one sort of in the middle of both of those at the bottom. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example of how to sew down one of the dots on the other eye, because I haven't started this one yet. So I'm probably going to do this one in the top left corner to start with. So obviously for each of the dots that you have, you'll have 2 tails, the short one that was at the beginning of the foundation chain, and then your tail that was at the end that you cut specifically for the purpose of sewing. So I'm going to start off using this longer tail, and this is what we're going to be using for the majority of the sewing, but then we're going to use this other tail to sort of knot off at the back and secure this thing in place. So because this is such a small piece, I wouldn't recommend using any pins for this. I would just recommend holding it in place with your hand. And as I say, you're aiming to get this sort of top left corner here. So I'm going to start off by going into this stitch. And then I'm just going to sew all the way around, which is only going to be a few stitches because obviously this is quite a small piece. And if you're struggling with this, feel free to use any other method to get the black dots on here. You could use felt or you could embroider it. I just found this to be the easiest method for me, but it's completely up to you what you do. So that's going to complete the sewing, and then all I'm going to do, as I mentioned before, is to bring this yarn tail to the back of the eye as well. So I might go here to sort of, you see there's a little bit of a gap here, I might just go into this stitch here to try and close up that gap a little bit. So that's what the dot's going to look like, and I'm quite happy with that placement. If you know, you look at it and you're not happy with it, you can always unpick what you've done and re-sew it. So then when you're happy, just make sure that you're knotting at the back of the piece to keep the dot in place. So I'm just going to do a double knot here, and then if you wanted to, you could even weave those yarn tails through the back of the piece as well, to keep it even more secure. But I'm just going to cut these at this point so that they're short enough that they won't poke through when I'm sewing, like that. And obviously, yeah, as I'm sewing around, I'll just make sure to use my finger to push the tails inwards so that, like I say, they're not poking out around the edges. But yeah, so what I'll do now is I'll leave you to do the other dots yourself. So as I said before, you want to do one here, and you want to do the same pattern on both of the eyes. So once you've done that, come back and I'll show you how to sew the eyes to the body. I finished sewing the black dots to the eyes now, so this is what they look like. So let's sew them to the body now. I sewn down one of the eyes, I'm going to do the other one with you now. Before you start, I'd recommend that you pin both eyes down at the same time, just to make sure that, you know, together they leave enough space between for a mouth and that the positioning looks right and stuff. So that's what I've done. So obviously I've sewn this one down, I'm going to move on to this one now. So as I mentioned, you probably want to leave about a 3 single crochet gap between the sort of top corner here that's closest to each other of each of the eyes, and then you want to make sure that you're putting the eyes on a bit of a slant and that the other corner of the eye is just below the ear. So that's kind of a bit of a guide for positioning here. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to whip stitch around to start with, so just like this. Okay, so then what I want to do is along the top I'm going to do a running stitch instead of a whip stitch, and that just means that instead of going from yellow to purple, yellow to purple, yellow to purple, I'm going to go in for a yellow loop, for a purple, then purple, yellow, yellow, purple, and so on, and that just kind of maintains some of the straightness of this line a little bit better, I find. So I'm going to start off by coming back out through a nearby yellow loop like this, and then I'm ready to start my running stitch. So I'm going to go into the next stitch and through a nearby purple stitch if I can get it, and then find another nearby purple stitch and go back out through a yellow stitch like that. And I'm probably just going to remove this pin at this point as it's getting in my way. Try to make sure that you keep any of the inside black on the inside and don't let that peek out, but you can always trim any at the end if that does happen. So I'm just going to continue doing that running stitch, then whip stitch all the way back down to the bottom, and then meet you when I finished that. Finished sewing down this eye now, so I'm just going to weave my yarn tail through the eye. I don't know why I did that. You could weave it through the body as well, but I'm just going to do that and then cut that. And now the next thing I think it makes sense to do is to do the mouth, which is just going to use some scrap black yarn. So grab that and let's do the mouth. I've got my black yarn here ready to do the mouth. You can make it smiling or angry. I've seen pictures where, you know, there's multiple expressions that Dustox can have, but the one I'm copying is meant to be a happy one. So I am just going to bring my yarn tail through to about 2/3 of the way down the edge of the eye, I would say that is. And then I want to do the mouth just above where we first started doing back loop only work, so probably bring it to about here, and I'm just going to go through that stitch and then come back out where the other side of the mouth should be, like that. And then I'm going to try and go back through the black stitch a little bit for the bottom of the mouth, and then just come out at any random point. It doesn't really matter where you bring your yarn tail to, so I'm just going to pull that through. And there we have it. You can do it, like I say, any expression that you want, but I've just got a slight smile on mine, although it looks a bit like an evil smile because of the way that the eyes are sort of pointed down diagonally, but I think that's how it's supposed to look. So I'm just going to now bring that black yarn tail through to the back, and I'm also going to do the same with this one. You could do some more sophisticated knotting if you wanted to, but because like no one's going to be playing with this or anything, it's just going to be displayed, so I don't need to be too secure in terms of the black yarn that I've just used. So that should do. I'm just going to cut the yarn, and that is the mouth complete, which was nice and easy. So now I think the next thing to do is to crochet the arms, or the legs, I guess. I think I called them legs, but they could be considered arms as well. For the legs, you're going to need your red yarn. We're going to start off by doing 6 single crochets in a magic circle. So that's round 1. Then for rounds 2 to 5, you're simply going to single crochet all the way around, so I'll meet you at the end of round 5. I've completed round 5 and added some stuffing, as you can see, so you're going to want to do the same, and then just cut your yarn, leaving a tail long enough for sewing. And then we need to close up this remaining hole. So as usual, I'm just going to go through the front loop of each of those final 6 single crochets. and then weave my yarn tail through the middle to a stitch somewhere near the bottom like this. And then this is going to be ready for sewing onto the body. So we're going to need to make 4 of these in total, so make 3 more, come back and I'll show you how to sew them to the body. I've sewn down 3 of the legs, just got this last one to do, so I'm just going to do this with you now. The way you want to position this is the top leg being a couple of rounds beneath the eye, and then the other leg being just beneath the top leg that you've done, and doing the same thing on both sides. So I'm just gonna hold this in place. Again, you can use pins if you want, but I found that they kept falling out, so I'm just gonna not bother using them for this. And I'm just gonna start, I'm going to whip stitch just around the edge here and then stop kind of when I get to where my thumb is now, and I'm just going to, like I say, try and position this just beneath what I did already for the leg above. Sorry if the angle's not perfect. I'm finding it a little bit tricky to do this while filming. Okay, so that should be enough stitches sewn down, and as you can see, that's the leg there underneath this one, so that all looks good in terms of the positioning. So I'm just going to weave my yarn tail through the leg. Again, you could weave it through the body if you wanted to make it even more secure, but I'm just going to stick with this, cut that, and that is the legs complete. So now we're going to move on to the wings. We're now going to start crocheting the wings, and I just want to show you my shiny Dustox that I did before, just to demonstrate what I'm trying to explain here, because I think it'll be easier if you see it. So as you can see on the Dustox, there is 1 large wing and 1 small wing on either side, so we're going to need to make 2 large and 2 small wings. We're going to start off by making the large wings, but they are quite similar in the way that they're crocheted. But for the large wing, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make 2 tips. That's what I call kind of these parts here. So this is the first tip and this is going to be the second one, and then what we're going to do is in a later round we're going to join them together and then just start crocheting in the round with both of those joined up. So as you can see, the first tip is bigger than the second tip. We're going to start off by making the first tip and then move on to the second. For the smaller wing, you can see that the tips are actually the same size, so it's a bit more simple in that it's the exact same pattern for each tip, and then you just join them together in a later round. But let's start off by making the first tip of the big wing, and then we're going to move on to the second tip of the big wing. So for the first tip of the big wing, I've got my dark green yarn because I'm obviously just making a standard Dustox in this tutorial. If you wanted to make a shiny one like what I showed at the beginning of the video and what I just showed there, then feel free to change this to dark brown and mid brown instead of dark and mid green. So I'm going to start off by chaining 9. We are going to be working in rounds, but we're going to be crocheting around a foundation chain. Then what I'm going to do is working along the chain, and again I would recommend working into the back loops when you're crocheting around a foundation chain. I just think it's easier to work around both sides when you do that, but you can, if you find that difficult, just work in these front loops. But what we're going to do is we're going to do 7 single crochets to start with. Then in the final chain, we're going to work an increase. So we're going to do 2 single crochets. Now make sure that you've turned your work so that you're ready to start crocheting along the other side of the foundation chain. But we're just going to repeat the same thing again. So we're going to work 7 single crochets and then an increase. And you're going to want to make sure that you're crocheting over this tail as well. It just means that it secures it in place and we can cut that at the end. So this is the second single crochet. And now I'm doing my increase. Okay, so that is round 1 complete, and you will have 18 single crochets. And as I mentioned, if you crocheted over the tail like I did, you can just pull on it very gently just to make sure that there's no sort of bumps or anything like that in your work. And then once you've done that, you can cut it because that's now secured. Okay, so now we are ready to start round 2. So for round 2, we're just going to single crochet all the way around. And I am going to use a stitch marker to mark the first single crochet here because it's easier to lose track, I think, when you're doing the first few rounds when you're crocheting around a foundation chain. So I like to use a stitch marker. Now I'm just about to do my final single crochet, but we're going to want to change colour at this point. So what you're going to do is you're going to start your single crochet like normal, like this, but then rather than yarning over and pulling through in your dark green, you're going to yarn over and pull through in your mid green instead. So I'm just grabbing that. And that is round 2 completed. For rounds 3 to 5, you're simply going to single crochet all the way around in your light green colour, but I am just going to show you the first few single crochets of round 3 to show you how to start off when you're starting in a new colour, and how to crochet over the tails and things like that. So I'm just going to remove this stitch marker now. I'm going to do my first single crochet in my light green, and I'm going to crochet over both the light and dark green tails like that. I'm going to put my stitch marker back in now, although it's easier obviously to track this round because you're changing colour, so the first stitch that's in light green will be your first stitch of the round. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple more single crochets, crocheting over both tails like that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull on those tails as you saw, so just gently pull on the tails to make sure that, you know, again, there's no like loose parts of your work and that everything is good and there's no bumps showing either. And then what I would normally do is instead of just cutting the tails now, I just do one more single crochet without crocheting over the tails like this, and then now I will cut those tails now that they're both nice and hidden in my work. So you can leave a little bit of a tail if you want because it will just sit on the inside of the tip, but I'm going to cut quite close, so there's not much tail remaining, and that means that you should now not need your dark green yarn anymore. You can just put that somewhere else, and then you can just carry on crocheting around in your light green or mid green. So you're just going to continue that rounds 3 to 5, single crochet all the way around. I'll meet you at the end of round 5. I've completed round 5 of the first tip, so I'm just going to remove this stitch marker now, and then all you're going to want to do is just cut your yarn, leaving a very short tail like this. You can weave it in at this point, so if you want to sort of knot it on the inside at this point, you can do that. I tend to just leave it and then crochet over it and then cut it later on, so that's what I'm going to do. But yeah, this is the first tip, so this is the sort of thing that you should hopefully have at this point. Now we're going to move on to making the smaller second tip, and then, as I mentioned before, we're going to then join the 2 tips together in a later round. So the second tip is basically the same technique as what we already did for the first one, but just a smaller size. So this time we're going to start out by chaining 7. Then we're going to do 5 single crochets along the foundation chain. And then an increase. Then same thing on the other side. 5 single crochets. And then an increase. And then gently pull on the tail here and then cut that. So now we're ready to start round 2. So I'm just going to talk you through the next few rounds, as it's basically the same as what we did on the other tip, other than, again, it's smaller rounds this time. So round 2, single crochet all the way around in your dark green, so that should be 14 single crochets in total. Then in that final stitch, make sure that you change to your mid green. Then for rounds 3 to 5, single crochet all the way around in your mid green colour. I'll meet you at the end of round 5. Do not cut your yarn, because we are going to continue crocheting around and we're going to join the other tip in round 6. So I've completed round 5 of the second tip, and now we're going to join both of them together in round 6. So we're going to start off by doing 7 single crochets into the second tip, and again I would recommend using a stitch marker at the beginning of this round because it's easy to lose track of where the round started. So I'm going to do 7 single crochets. Now what I'm going to do is work 18 single crochets around the first tip, so this one here, and you want to make sure that the first single crochet that you work is at either side of this, so you could do it in this side or you could do it in this side here. I'm just going to do it in the closest side to me at the moment, so this one here, and I'm just going to do my first single crochet like that. And then just continue working all the way around. Final single crochet in the first tip like that, and then we're going to work 7 single crochets into the second tip, and this time you're going to want to crochet over the tail at least for a few of those stitches if you didn't already knot it on the inside of your first tip. And if you're unsure where's the first single crochet to go into, you can count back 7 after the stitch marker. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so it must be this one. This one here is our first single crochet. So 1, I'm going to pull on that tail a little bit just to make sure that, again, it's not loose in there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is round 6 complete. You should have 32 single crochets all the way around, and you can cut this tail now as well. I'm going to talk you through the remaining rounds for the wing now, as they should be fairly straightforward. So round 7, single crochet all the way around, so that's 32 single crochets. Round 8, 6 single crochet decrease, repeat that 3 more times to get you down to 28 single crochets. Rounds 9 to 10, single crochet all the way around, so again 28 single crochets per round. Round 11, 5 single crochet decrease, repeat that 3 more times to get you down to 24 single crochets. Rounds 12 to 13, single crochet all the way around. Round 14, 4 single crochet decrease, repeat 3 more times to get you down to 20 single crochets. Then rounds 15 to 16, single crochet all the way around. I'll meet you at the end of round 16 and show you how to finish off the wing. So I've just finished round 16. Once you finish round 16, you're going to want to do a few extra single crochets until you reach the edge of your wing. So for me, I'm going to need to do 3 more single crochets to get to that point. And then what you're going to do is work 10 slip stitches across the top of the wing, and that will close up the top of the wing. So and I guess technically this is going to actually be the bottom of the wing, but this is going to be the part that we sew to the back of the body. So once you're done, you're going to want to cut your yarn, leaving quite a long tail for this, ready for sewing. And this is what we've got. So this is one of the wings. Obviously this wing could be used for either side, because you can just flip it over like this, depending on which side you're going to want to sew it to. So now obviously you're going to want to make another one of these large wings, but I think before we start actually sewing the wings onto the body, let's just make all of the wings. So I'm going to move on to showing you how to make the small wing next. For the small wing, I've skipped ahead and made the 2 tips because it's basically the same pattern as for the second tip for the big wing, other than instead of doing 3 rounds in your mid-green colour, so rounds 3 to 5, you just do 2 rounds in your mid-green colour, so you end up with just 2 rounds in the mid-green. I'll pop the pattern back up on the screen as well so that you can see it if you've forgotten what you need to do for these, but yeah, it's basically the same thing. So you're going to want to make 1 tip, cut your yarn leaving a little bit of a tail, and then make the second tip, but stop at the end of round 4, don't cut your yarn, and we're going to join the 2 tips together in round 5 now. So again, the pattern follows a very similar pattern, I suppose, as for the big wing as well, just with smaller rounds this time. So we're going to start off by doing 7 single crochets into the first, well, sorry, into the tip that's currently on our hook. Then we're going to work 14 around the other tip, and I'm going to start off again with one of the single crochets that's near the edge. This is the final single crochet in that other tip, and now we're going to move back to this tip over here, and we're going to work 7 single crochets into this. And again, I'm going to count back from the stitch marker so I can know which stitch to go in first. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, so it's this one, and again I'm going to crochet over that tail as well. Okay, so that is round 5 complete. The 2 tips should be joined together and you should have 28 single crochets. I'm just going to talk you through the remaining rounds for the small wings. So for rounds 6 to 7, you're going to single crochet all the way around. Round 8, 5 single crochet decrease, repeat 3 more times to get you down to 24 single crochets. Rounds 9 to 10, single crochet all the way around. Round 11, 4 single crochet decrease, repeat 3 more times to get you down to 20 single crochets. Then rounds 12 to 13, single crochet all the way around. I'll meet you at the end of round 13 and we can close off the wing together. I've reached the end of round 13, and again, similarly to the big wing, we're going to single crochet up to the end of the wing, so one of the edges. I need to do about 2 single crochets to get to that point here, so 2 single crochets, and then we're going to do 10 slip stitches across the top to close this up. Okay, then just cut your yarn, leaving a very long tail for sewing. And again, you're needing to make 2 of these small wings. So once you've got 2 small wings and 2 big wings, come back and I'll show you how to sew them to the body. As you can see, I've sewn down 3 of the wings now, and I'm going to do the other one with you to show you the technique I've been using. I've been using the same technique for all the wings. As you can see from the positioning here, you're going to want to put the 2 bigger wings at the top, making sure that the longer tip of the wing is at the top on both sides, and then the 2 smaller wings to go underneath the bigger ones. So we're going to sew this at the back. I would recommend using pins for this. It's up to you, but I think that it helps a lot to keep everything in place. So obviously I've already done these 3, so I'm just going to use the positioning of those to help me with this. But basically what you're going to want to do in terms of your positioning is just making sure that those top wings are coming out slightly diagonally at the top here, and then the smaller wings are coming out slightly diagonally at the bottom as well. And yeah, you're just going to need to place it however sits best with your work, but you can have a look at the back here how I've positioned it. The top of my big wings seems to be at roughly rounds, let's just count down, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11. So if you kind of start around round 11, then you should get the right sort of positioning. So I'm just going to pin this, down. I'm just going to use 2 pins. So I'm going to start off by whip stitching along the straight edge, so this one here. It doesn't matter if your stitches aren't the neatest, as these will all be hidden at the back. So I'm just going to continue doing that until I get to the bottom and then show you what I do next. So I've reached the end of this part here. Now what I'm going to do is sew down a couple of stitches at the side, and I am going to have to sew into the little skirt bit at this point because I've gone that far down. So I'm just going to do a couple of stitches here. And then what I'm going to do is turn my work so that it's this way around now. I'm going to try my best to get this on camera for you. And then what I'm going to be doing is just sewing along this sort of row here, so not the bottom part here, just like one round above that, and I'm just going to be sewing that down to the inside part here. So maybe be a bit more careful with your stitches here because it's going to be more visible as it'll be on the front of the body, but I'm just going to sew down like this to give it a bit more stability. So yeah, I'll meet you when I get to the end of doing that. So I've sewn all the way along the inside there. Now I'm just going to finally sew down a couple of stitches at the side. And then that's it. So I'm just going to weave my yarn tail through the wing. Cut. So when you've sewn down all your wings, you should have something that looks like this. Now, one thing that you could do, because these do curl up a little bit, you could block this if you want to, or maybe just put a heavy book on the wings or something to flatten them down. But we're not quite finished yet. There's one last thing that we need to do, and that's to add the little red circle and little red line onto the large wing on both sides. So you're going to need your red yarn again for this. So for the first circle for the wing, I'm going to do this by doing some chains with my red yarn and sewing that to the wing. You can embroider this or do whatever you want, but I'm just going to do 12 chains. And then I'm going to slip stitch to the first chain, and I'm going to go through the 2 front loops to do this, so like this. And then I'm just going to cut my yarn, leaving a tail long enough for sewing. And that's all we need to do for the first ring. So as you can see, I've done one side. I'm going to do the other side with you now. So we're going to start off with the bigger loop, and that's going to go towards the top of the big wing. To sew this down, I'm going to be going through both of the front loops every single time when I'm sewing down. So, and you can use pins and stuff, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to hold this in place. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm sort of mirroring what I've done on the other side. So just whip stitching and going through both the front loops. I tried a few different methods and I found that this gave the cleanest look, but obviously feel free to do whatever you like the look of best. And we want this to kind of be not quite circular, we want it to be more of a sort of oval shape. So just bear that in mind as you're sewing. Okay, we're nearly done now. Okay, so we're pretty much back to where we started. I usually go into one of these loops just towards the inside of the ring here, and then just do one final stitch to try and tidy it up a little bit at the start. So you should end up with something that looks like that. Now I'm just going to weave my yarn tail through the wing if I can get it in. And then same with the other little tail as well. Oops, I've got myself in a bit of a mess here. There we go. And then you can cut those. So now we just need to sew the little line underneath. Now for the second bit, you're going to do a little line underneath this circle. So for this, we're just going to do a chain of 3. And then just cut your yarn, leaving a tail long enough for sewing. And that's it. So these 2 pieces, you're going to need to do it all again once more so that you've got 2 of each, and then you're going to sew them to the wings. So I'm going to position this probably a couple of rounds or a couple of single crochets, I suppose, underneath what we've just done. And then this time I'm going to use a slightly different technique. So I'm going to be this time sewing along the top, just in those top loops. So not both loops at once, just one loop at a time. And then I'm going to turn it and do the same thing on the other side. So just like that, and then you can do the same thing, just weaving your yarn tails through the work. And then you can cut them, and then we're finished. So this is what my finished Dustox looks like. I did end up slightly redoing that little bit where I sewed it down there because I wasn't quite happy with it, but I just shifted it over a little bit. But yeah, this is what it looks like. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.